Now, what is one thing that can be agreed upon in the cartoon community? The reason why I asked this question is because there will always be debate over things such as which Cartoon Network show is the best of all time or which era is the best of all time. But the one thing that I believe that can be mostly agreed upon is that none of these shows or eras would exist without the very first era of Cartoon Network. And that first era would be the Checkerboard Era.
Place to be this summer, Cartoon Network.
Don't miss it.
Without this era, we maybe wouldn't have seen Cartoon Network become the powerhouse that it would later become. But why is this era so special? What shows were acquired on the network that would make it different from a competing channel like Nickelodeon? And what was the overall theme of said era that would inspire the design for future ones? We will talk about all those things in this video right now, so don't go anywhere. The Checkerboard Era was launched on October 1st, 1992, which would be the same date the network would launch altogether. Now, the reason why this era is known as the Checkerboard Era should be pretty obvious. It'd actually be the fans who would name it this because, I mean, well, it resembles that of a checkerboard, but it also kind of makes you think like what other name had this era have been given if not the Checkerboard Era. But what's cool about this bumper is that it featured many of the characters from the shows acquired by the network within the tiles of the checkerboard. I think this was a nice touch because if you're looking to sell people on the fact that you're a cartoon channel with a huge inventory of shows, you want to try to include everybody in the mix and show what you have to offer. The genius company behind this look would be Coy McPherson Nash, an American design agency that will work on other projects that we now know today, such as Nickelodeon, PBS Kids, and Radio Disney, which all are iconic in their own right. Now, how will Cartoon Network grab a hold of all these shows? I mean, the amount of shows within its library seemed endless. Well, being that the network would obtain the rights of Hanna-Barbera, MGM, and Warner Bros., it would have access to their entire library of shows, which made finding content for the network not a problem at all. As a matter of fact, the network would have a total of 153 acquired series to start off its run.
Wow.
Talk about having a thick amount of content. This amount included familiar franchise series like Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, and Scooby-Doo. And just in case you were wondering, Merry Melody Short, Rhapsody Rabbit would be the first cartoon that would air on the network. But the thing is, the network at first relied heavily on these shows to carry it through its schedule. Now you gotta think a newcomer being introduced to Cartoon Network may think, yes, this is awesome. This network has over 100 shows that I can watch. But all of these shows are old. The Flintstones, the Jetsons, most of these shows are from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Now, obviously, a kid watching Cartoon Network at this time may not care. They may not realize that this may be an issue for them, but for an older audience like teens maybe, may look at this and may understand that this might be a glaring issue for them. But like, where is the original modern content at? Cartoon Network didn't have any of this in its beginning year. Well, the following year, Cartoon Network would produce 4 original series during this era. These originals would be The Moxie Show, Space Ghost Coast to Coast, What a Cartoon, and the forever iconic Dexter's Laboratory.
And now it's time for the Moxie Show!
Now, a little bit about the Moxie Show, also known as the Moxie Pirate TV show and the Moxie and Flea show, was quite a polarizing show for its time. Produced by Hanna-Barbera, the show was aired on May 25th, 1996 and consisted of 3D computer animated interstitials, which is just a fancy word for saying this show would appear shortly between other shows scheduled to air. The show featured the main character, Moxie, which of course was a dog, and Flea, which is self-explanatory. This strange looking flea was voiced by Penn Jillette, then later Chris Rock. Now, a couple reasons why this show is getting more spotlight over others is because, as said, this show would be the first official original series to air on Cartoon Network. More importantly, this show is considered to be lost media within the lost media community due to its lack of access to full episodes, lack of a DVD release, and overall vagueness of its absence. The Moxie Show has gathered a decent following with multiple content creators exploring its content. However, the show still remains a lost media mystery. After watching a lot of bumpers for this era on YouTube, I can say that there is a lot more to love about it other than its checkerboard theme and long list of shows. And that is the vignettes. For one, I'm an absolute sucker when it comes to cartoon characters from different shows interacting with one another, and Cartoon Network at this time had plenty of that. They had Mr. T in a vignette in this workout circuit type deal, trying to get Fred Flintstone, Yogi Bear, and Magilla Gorilla in shape because they're all fat. So instead of Cartoon Network, it's Cartoon Workout. And I just love how Mr. T is just being super macho with these cartoon characters, being that he himself is a real life character, he's a real life person. Some of the frequent vignettes I came across were a lot of the Space Ghost Coast to Coast marathon ones. I've never watched the show. I mean, this whole thing was decades before my time, but from my best understanding, they reimagined the show from its original one that was made in the 60s and turned it into this adult talk show of sorts. The material seemed to be made of majority satire and non sequitur humor. And they also invited several real life celebrities and cartoon characters on their show. Honestly, I've never seen a show like this to this degree. I like the premise, and probably had I been born during this time to watch it, I probably would have liked it. And then of course, I came across a lot of the acquired series vignettes, such as the Bugs and Daffy Show, George of the Jungle, the Jetsons, and surprisingly how the Grinch Stole Christmas for their holiday specials. A lot of the other vignettes included the rest of the cast in one single bumper spot, and yes, you can see the checkerboard theme being included in most of these. I think what I like about all this is not only the creativity, but just the amount of variety in shows they had. Cartoon Network seemed to have had plenty of material to use without feeling repetitive or boring. And there's also something wholesome about watching old animation with raggedy quality that makes the 90s look like times were so much more simpler, and it really was. Now, I gotta be honest with you. In 1992, Murray wasn't even a twinkle in his parents' eye. But now that I'm older and I look back on how much of Cartoon Network I watched, I can see how this era inspired future eras that would come later. Several eras that would come later would still keep the original logo, but an era that would come decades later, the Checkered Era, still utilized that same checkerboard pattern in its bumper spots, while also having a new and updated design. This would be the era where we'd see programming blocks that are now timeless favorites, such as Boomerang and Super Chunk. Super Chunk was a television block that premiered in 1994 and is most notable for being the first Cartoon Network block to air marathons of action shows like Captain Planet, The Fantastic Four, and SWAT Cats. A nice little feature the show had was little trivia questions that the block asked between commercial breaks based on the show that was being aired. And this should also be noted, this era lasted from 1992 to 98, so during the 6-year period, Cartoon Network would produce more original content that would later become staples for the CN franchise. These shows will be now what you go to the retail stores to purchase merchandise at. And these shows will be Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, I Am Weasel, and some of the other ones will come a year, 2 years after this era. But as with any company selling a product, there will always be a competitor. I don't think Nickelodeon needs much of an introduction for this video. However, I will say that with the arrival of Cartoon Network, competition between the two channels would absolutely start to brew in the 90s. What made the two channels different, I'd say, is the directions they decided to take as far as what was presented. Since its creation in 1979, Nickelodeon seemingly had one direction it wanted to take with its live action content, and then took another with the arrival of cartoons in the 90s. The channel will only increase in quantity with this type of content, especially with its game show themed programs and original cartoon shows. Nickelodeon wanted to be a jack of all trades and not just cater to kids but all audiences for that matter, and this will be further evident with the creation of Nick at Night and Nick Jr. Cartoon Network, on the other hand, wasn't looking to be Cartoon Network at Night or Teen Cartoon Network. It was looking to specialize in one thing, and that one thing would be cartoons. Cartoon Network was honing its craft with cartoon animation. The network was establishing what it wanted to be and wasted no time in doing so. But as mentioned earlier, this era would eventually run its course. Its primary branding would be defunct in June of 1997, and secondary branding, which would be the Starburst era, on March 1st, 1998. Overall, this era was succeeded by the Powerhouse era, which would only build off what the first era had done and further added on to its collection of original content. And you want to know when a movie, song, video game, or in this case, era is special? It's when, although you weren't necessarily born in that era to experience it for yourself, there are still shades and remnants of that exist in future versions of it. The checkerboard era still lives on through modern depictions of Cartoon Network, and its legacy will remain relevant as long as the network exists. And as long as Cartoon Network executives and people who work with the company now continue to pay respect to its history and pay homage to the shows and eras and work put in before it. And that is, to me, what made Cartoon Network's first era special. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button and comment down below. What era do you think was the best and was the most special for you? Were you born to actually experience the first era of Cartoon Network, and what was that like? Let me know down in the comments. Once again, thank you for watching. I love you. God bless you. I'll see you in the next video, and don't hate, motivate.
Premiere Tunes, the show. Catchy. 3 new tunes instead of 1 every Sunday night. Sundays at 7, only on Cartoon Network.